Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm aware that we have run out of some of the handouts, so we are making more copies, so just be patient, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm aware. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm glad that everyone was able to come out and make it for this afternoon. This is going to be a very interesting lecture. I'm excited to hear about it. So I'm sure some of you are aware that Dr. Gabis has been here previously and has helped with our movers and shakers and the dementia support. So he's going to be giving a lecture on how we can help our neighbors and just kind of learn more about those things. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Gabis.
Testing one, there we go. Okay. So who's hooting and hollering in here? Okay, well, I'm really surprised and pleased to see so many people here. I'm hoping and praying that this is going to be a worthwhile time for you all to consider this is a part about how to be community and how to help and not help your neighbors in a sense. So I want to tell you how I first came to Otterbein because I think it's kind of providential. Some of you may know this story. I see some of you folks who are in the Movers and Shakers group. How many people here are in the Movers and Shakers group? Okay, that's a group for movement disorders. We meet once a month, the third Friday of the month. And I see many people here who are in the caregiver support group. How many people in the caregiver support group are here? Okay. Yeah, okay, you were. Yeah, okay. So, and I see many of you who I know in other ways you and to make your acquaintance again. This talk was generated from the resident council based on the need to understand how to help people who are impaired in your neighborhood and how to, how much can you help, how much should you help, and how do you consider that obligation or the need? So this is what we're going to talk about. So Okay. So the idea is to consider this together, and I want to show you the objectives that we have today. Hopefully you understand the likelihood of encountering dementia yourself, the likelihood of you getting dementia, as well as among your neighbors. And we want to identify yourself as part of a community of caring. This is Otterbein, of course, is a community of care. That's why you came here. This is not necessarily a cruise ship, that we have social directors and everything else like that, and people waiting on us hand and foot. And so you will hopefully identify helpful and unhelpful ways of supporting your neighbors who struggle. The word is struggling, and you will understand how to refer struggling neighbors for additional support. Okay, so those are the goals that I have, and I hope that in the course of our conversation and our talk today, they will be met, and maybe some other goals that you might have as well. So let's begin. So helping thy neighbor who struggles. So this is of course based on the idea of and who is my neighbor from the Gospel of Luke. The man fell into robbers on the way to Jericho, and the priest and Levite passed him, and a Samaritan finally helps him and puts him on his animal and puts him up in the inn and pays for his rent and all that stuff. So, and then Jesus says to the guy, and who was the neighbor? And he said, the Samaritan was the neighbor, and he says, well, then go and do likewise. So when you come to Otterbein, you come here with a certain mindset. Most people who come to Otterbein come here because of the spiritual orientation and spiritual tradition that Otterbein has had for many years, over these 100 years. And I love that. In fact, I love how faith-based communities like this address the needs of the whole person. And I kind of think that like having a chaplaincy on site here is a good way to add soul to your community. And it's different from, let's say, somewhere like in Cincinnati, the Season is a for-profit place. When you come here, it's a different kind of environment, and you come here for that reason. At least most people do. That's one of the attractions. In fact, we provide services in about 25 different long-term care settings like this. And we love to work in nonprofit, faith-based places because of that reason. When I first came here to Otterbein, it was in 1994. I was just finishing graduate school. I was a priest for 10 years prior to my becoming trained as a psychologist. And I was driving by here on the way to an interview in Lebanon, a nursing home in Lebanon. And I had heard stuff about Otterbein, and I knew that it was, in those days, it was on the cutting edge of treatment. And so I drove by here, and I stopped in to the administrator's office, and I just took a chance. I said, "Is the administrator here today?" And they said, "She is." It was Sue Lippy at the time. Some of you may remember her, maybe not. Does anybody remember Sue Lippy? Okay, there you go. Chuck does. So anyway, I said to Sue, I'm a psychologist. I'm starting out as helping elderly folks. And she said, "You know, that's funny. Our psychologist just resigned on Monday." And this was like on a Friday. So I said, is that a God thing or not? So I've been here ever since, and I'm very happy to be here still. And I consider myself a part of this community. If I have enough money, I might retire here, who never know, Okay, so what struggles are you guys seeing? What struggles are you seeing among your neighbors? Tell me, what struggles are you seeing? You can raise your hand here.
Sorry. I'm seeing in one particular resident how should I say? She doesn't want to see anyone. She's more into herself rather than wanting help.
Isolation. You're saying
she's isolating herself because of a spouse. Who does have dementia.
We want to maintain confidentiality here too, so we're not going to name names or what neighborhood you're from or whatever. Okay, so isolation and kind of wanting to take care of her husband alone. Okay, what other things are you seeing? Anne?
On our court, we have several older, really old people coming out and walking that they look like they could just topple. And I'm always watching to make sure somebody doesn't fall over.
Okay. So feebleness. Yes. Okay.
Wandering and just walking into other people's units because she doesn't know where she is.
Okay. Wandering, walking into other people's units. What else are you seeing among folks who struggle?
Just not able to take care of their daily needs.
Their functional activities of daily living are falling through the cracks.
Disoriented.
People are disoriented. Yes?
Getting in a place and not being able to find their way out.
Okay.
Ladies' locker room.
Okay. The ladies' locker room in the YM. Okay. Yes, sir? People are paranoid. Okay. Mistrustful of other people, hearing things, hearing things coming out of their speakers or thinking that other people are looking in on them.
Not taking their medicines or getting their medicines mixed up.
Okay, not taking their medicines, getting their medicines mixed up. Yes.
Repeated emergency vehicles coming to the house.
Yeah, frequent flyers. Yeah, frequent flyers for the EMS. Yeah, they have. Now, there's something going on that they have to have that. There's something going on there. Yes.
Extremely hard of hearing or deaf, and pretending that they're not either.
Okay. Okay. What? Yeah, he says what? Okay, so we can see that there's a mix of issues that people are, by the grace of God, you and I are experiencing, and they're farther down the pipeline than we might be, So, but you're seeing these kind of things that is creating a reaction in you. So let's take the next question. Okay, so how do you respond to their struggles? What do you do? How do you respond to their struggles? Yes.
You respond to them by helping them and saying to them, I'm available to you at any time you need me.
That's how you do that?
That's how I have reacted.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have reacted by telling them they really need to talk to the social worker. It would be helpful for them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then calling the social worker in advance to tell her that they would be calling.
You point them in a different direction. Rather than you providing the help, you point them in a different direction.
Back here?
Yes.
I just happened to be walking down, or looking out the window, and a lady was walking up the middle of one of the main roads out near the lake. And I stopped and hurried out because she was all alone looking around, and asked her, can I help you? And fortunately, she just looked at me and said, I don't know where I live. And so fortunately, I've had some first responder training. I wasn't too panicked, but we went to the social worker, put her in the cart. I think we put her in the golf cart, went to the social worker, and she went to other people, and we found out who it was. I took her back to the house, and when we went back to where she lived, her husband, the man who was there, said, I don't know who she is, but I'll take her in.
Oh my goodness.
And I think he was serious. That was very, I think we had a double problem, and I only bring that up because you have to really think about what steps, how far will I go with this?
Right, that's right. You have to really understand the situation. You have to understand the situation. Double jeopardy. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think in response to saying, if I can help you anytime, let me know. It's more getting to them because they're not going to ask you for the help. So you need to say, call them, see them, actually meet with them and not just ask them to call you if they need help.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Well, sometimes you're put into a situation where you have to respond like this.
Yeah, of
sometimes
course.
Some people ask for help. Some people knock on the door and say, I don't know where I am, or can you fix my medicines for me?
Right.
And some people you might be willing to say, I'm your neighbor, I'm willing to help you if I can. Something like that.
I know I have a neighbor who is isolation. She seems perfectly fine. When you can get through to her, she doesn't answer her door, she doesn't answer her phone, that type of thing. So that kind of isolation kind of concerns me as well, even though when you do talk to her, she seems quite well,
Yeah. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know what the situation is behind their front door.
We help a friend by writing things down, helping her write down when she has certain appointments and other things so she doesn't forget them, and she sees them on her calendar.
So you provide an extra brain for her, for that person. Yes, one more.
That's why we have That's why we have name tags given to us. If she had a name tag on, you could call the main desk and know exactly where she belonged.
Right, if she remembers to wear it. Yeah, that's true, but that's a good point. You never, you know, who would have thought? You know, well, I'm wearing my name tag so I can remember who I am and where I live, you know? But it's true, correct? It's true sometimes. It's true sometimes. Okay, so then, so these are some of the responses that you have. You know, you can see that by our answers, some responses are more intense and more willing, you know, than others. Like I say to them, I'm at your disposal, you know. That's one answer. And one person might say, I'll point you in the right direction. Or another person might, you know, solve the problem, you know, that is there. And then sometimes you're confused about what should you do if someone doesn't even answer their door. But yet you want to be neighborly at the same time. So there are different approaches to these struggles. So here's one. How do you feel about how you respond to other people? Some people get irritated. They might say, like in the congregate living, like Terrace Place, or what's the other, the gallery, yeah, or the TLC, LEC, yeah, LEC. So they might say, why do they let these people in here? You know, why do they let these people in here? Well, they should do something about them. You know, they should do something about them. And so how do you feel about whenever you're called on to respond to a neighbor who's struggling? How do you feel about that?
Sorry.
Monica. You can yell.
That's a good question. I find that I do that in two levels. If it's somebody that I already have a relationship with, who's aging in place, I find that I'm much more compassionate. We had a situation in our neighborhood where someone moved in and they were already at a situation where they needed a lot of help. And in that situation, I didn't feel that I was in a position to do anything other than contact the administration and let them handle it. So my level of compassion flows in two things. One is if I know them already and if I know them already, then my willingness to intervene and help and take them to the doctor or help them with things is on a different level than that of someone who just moves into the neighborhood, opportunity to contribute, hasn't had an opportunity to bond with the neighbors.
I would say, I would clarify what you said, because I think I know you, and I don't think that it's a question of compassion. I think it's a question of involvement. Of your prior involvement means, you know, when you have interactions with people, you're more involved, and then you're more committed. You're more committed because you know them, versus someone whom you don't know. But it's not a question of compassion, I don't think. Because I think it's a question of involvement and how much you know someone, and when you know them, you're more committed to that person. That's a very good point.
It's my responsibility as a human being. If someone is struggling and I see it, it's my responsibility as a human being to help them, whatever it takes.
Okay, I respect that. I respect that, and there should be more of us like that. Okay? Okay, I'm sorry.
I can yell.
No.
Just a moment.
I have, you know, it's one thing to have compassion for one of your neighbors who needs help, especially if you have the relationship with them already. But I wonder sometimes, why, and I think there's probably a reason, perhaps HIPAA, I don't know, but why do people who are obviously incapable of living alone and managing themselves, why they end up in independent living? That is a good question, I think, and many of us have that question.
That's a good question. That keeps coming up. It keeps coming up in resident council, yes. Okay, so okay. Deanne.
Okay, I'm going to add on to that because I've been here long enough that when I first moved into my court, everyone was up and about, able. We had watermelon parties. We had things with other courts. It was all very, quote, normal.
Yeah.
And then they started moving in one at a time to the point that few of us can do the chores that need to be done on the court. They're always looking for people to do the mail and get the stuff.
Get some fresh blood.
We didn't have the problem before, but now a lot of people don't even come out. So it's kind of going that direction.
Well, you say, well, let's put everybody, let's do this. I got a plan. Let's put everybody who's able-bodied in one court, okay? We'll put them in one court, and then you know what's going to happen? 3 years later, they're all going to be not able-bodied, So you have this, the criteria for being admitted to independent living are not always the criteria for staying.
But some are coming in with not being able.
That's right. That's a good question, and that's a very difficult problem to address. And we'll talk about that briefly here. Go ahead. Okay, we'll use the mics.
I wanted to add one more comment, and that is the way I feel about how to respond also depends on the amount of emotional margin I have. So if I don't have enough emotional margin to delve into something else, I just can't do that.
Right.
I have to limit that in that regard.
And then there's some cognitive dissonance going on because it's like whenever you pass someone who asks for money, Jesus said, help your neighbor, give to those who ask, but you didn't, so how do you be a disciple at the same time? One more comment.
One comment in regards to people not taking care of themselves in independent living, because sometimes I have that problem as well. But there is a wellness department, and the wellness department can help lighten up some of the load. Do the laundry, clean the house.
Sure.
For people.
Sure. Let's, okay, thank you, John. So, I think that many times we feel whenever these situations present themselves to us, I think often we feel conflicted. We feel conflicted. On the one hand, if not me, then who? That's poor language. That's poor. It should be if not I, right? Okay. If not me, I'm an English teacher. If not me, then who? Then so me, you have the compassion for your neighbor. That's how you were raised. That's your values, your Christian values. Me, you have a desire to help. But then who? But then who is the who? Why aren't they doing something about it? Or how is it that they are able to kind of come in to an independent living situation when it's clear, perhaps, or it became clear, it's not always clear when they come in, or it became clear that they are not able to manage themselves in an independent living situation. So it often presents to us a situation of feeling conflicted on the inside. And we can even see the tension, if you could take the emotional temperature in our room here, you can sense there's some tension about that, about how much to become involved, about how much we know someone, are they really qualified to stay in independent living, So what do you do when they're lost? And all those kind of situations that create problems for those folks who are struggling. Okay, so, and who is my neighbor? You know, I am your neighbor. You are my neighbor. We are all neighbors. Have you ever heard that country and western song, I'm my own grandpa? Yeah. Well, I can't remember how it goes, but how's it go? Okay. Okay, he's his own grandpa. It's a cute little song. It's a little ditty. But we're all connected. We're all related. You know, if I'm not your neighbor, well, we're all neighbors, and we're all related. We're all connected. And so really, we can say, who is my neighbor? We say, you know, Mary might be saying, well, you're my neighbor. I say, you're my neighbor. No, you're my neighbor, you know. So we're all related. We're all related in our endeavors to, you know, how's it go? Fiddler on the Roofs, to eke out a living without breaking our necks. You know, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to eke out a living without breaking our necks. So let's do Otterbein neighbors. So how many neighbors live at Otterbein? By the numbers. So in independent living, these statistics are from about a month ago. As of a month ago, there are 661 of you living in independent living, ages 57 to 101. The average age of someone living in independent living is 82.5 years old. So, oh, by the way, if you want to get a copy of these slides, you can, where would we sign up? I think there's supposed to be a sheet of paper. So we'll have a sheet of paper in the back. If you want the copy of these slides, just on the way out, I can send them to you. Okay, I'll email it to you. Just give me your email address. So in assisted living, there are 68 of you. Average age is 85. In healthcare, you can see that the age is increasing. Independent living, 82. Assisted living, 85. Healthcare, 87. So there are 132 of you in healthcare. Memory care, 45. Rehab, 28. And that changes from time to time. So at any given time, there is about 850 folks who are living here. And I don't know how does this compare to years ago? How does this, yes, how does this compare to years ago? There are more here. Yeah, there are a lot more here. Okay. So Otterbein has grown. Otterbein has grown. So. Right. So Otterbein neighbors. So there are 834 neighbors here. So that's a lot of neighbors. How likely is my neighbor to develop dementia? In other words, when you hear the word neighbor, you can also say, how likely am I? Right, got it, okay. How likely am I to develop dementia? So the greatest predictor of dementia is age. The older you get, the more likely you are to develop dementia. Also, the number of children you might have. Because you get dementia from your children, right? You know, okay. Okay, so age is a predictor. So if you are among the young old, you know, and whenever the young old move into your court, you're really glad to see them because you're not going to have to do much for them, you know. I'm kidding. Okay, so the young old, ages from 70 to 74, 5% of those folks will have dementia in general. These statistics are from the Alzheimer's Association. So ages 75 to 84, that's the old. They have the young old, then the old. 13% of those folks are likely to develop or have dementia. So if you are 75 and 84, the 1 out of 10 of you here, you're developing dementia. You already have it, so if your age is 85 to 94, you can see that's the old. 23% will develop dementia. And if you're among the very old, 95 and older, 33% of you will have dementia. So the likelihood of encountering dementia here in Otterbein is high or low? High. It's very high. 1 in 3 persons is likely to have dementia here. You know, we are likely developing dementia ourselves. So it's good to recall this, that we are among we are among friends here, because we're all going to get something. You know, we all die of something, and so we are among folks who are quite frankly honest with ourselves that these are the conditions that we might develop. Okay, so what is another predictor of dementia? Women are more likely to get dementia than men, but not much more likely to. So I don't know who gives it to whom. If they get it because they take care of their husbands, but they kill their husbands first because they live older than they live longer than their husbands. So a comment? Okay. I'll describe dementia. The question is, could you describe dementia? Dementia is a descriptor of symptoms, of a complex of symptoms that can be caused by any number of diseases: Alzheimer's disease, vascular disease, Huntington's disease, Parkinson's disease, any kind of neurological problem like that. But it's the primary qualifier is forgetfulness and one other area of impairment, like decision making, like judgment, like language, like attention, those kinds of things like that. So memory is the primary diagnostic symptom, plus at least one other area. Yes? I can repeat your question.
I think maybe there could be a correlation between living here and somewhat reducing your exposure to dementia with the support we have versus hiding out in the attic of a house somewhere.
That's right. Rob is saying that if you come to Otterbein, the likelihood of dementia manifesting itself might be a little bit lower because of the supportive services that are here. There are more compensatory services that here. In terms of quality of life, engagement of your mind, and things like that. Exercise, cardiovascular. You know, you have the YMCA here, and that is a great way to avoid the onset of dementia as well, because of good cardiovascular health is good brain health. You know, if you have poor circulation here, poor circulation in your feet, you also have poor circulation in your brain. Okay, so what do you think are some other predictors of dementia? Family history, right? Inheritance, what your family brings to you. I spoke to a fellow just the other day, just yesterday. He and I went out for a sandwich, and his mother had dementia, his brother had dementia, and 2 of his uncles had dementia. And his son, and this guy, I think he ran 60 marathons. He ran 60 marathons, and he's developing dementia, unfortunately. But his son said, I thought Dad would be, because he was so active, he would dodge the bullet, but he didn't. And the predictor in his case was because he had such a strong family history. So if you have a family history, you have a 30% chance, a greater chance of developing dementia. Education is also a predictor of dementia, or the lack of it. So you see that 6% of college graduates will develop dementia, whereas people with less than 12 years of education have a 20% more likelihood of developing dementia. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? using your brain cells more. You have more connections you've built because of education. You've built more connections in your brain so that by the time, if your brain is losing brain cells, that's what happens. You lose brain cells. So if you're starting here and you lose brain cells, well, you have a lower ceiling. But if you're starting here and you lose brain cells, then it takes a while to get down to that point so that you have more of a buffer. So sometimes when we do testing, for example, we do neuropsychological testing for people who are having cognitive problems. If they're college educated, you know what happens when they test? They do well. They test well. And some when they see the results, they say, "Oh, great, there's nothing wrong." But a lot of times the people who are experiencing this, they say, "No, I know there's something wrong," even though you can't see it, or their husband or wife might say, "There is something wrong." They may do well on a test, but they're not able to manage their daily life. It does help if you keep stimulating. You keep stimulated, particularly doing something new, like learning a musical instrument, like joining a club, or like the Scribblers group, or doing writing and sharing your writings. Or I've often thought this would be an interesting thing, but activities. If I were an activity coordinator, I'll get to you. If I were an activity coordinator, I think what I'd like to have is people reading scripts from the old-time radio shows, and I'd put them up on the stage, and it would be fun. It'd be a hoot just to watch them, do these old-time radio programs and things like that, acting, in drama, those kind of things that are new, singing in a choir. Singing in a choir is also good. Or the bells, I visited, there was a guy I sing in a choir with him at my church, and this fellow developed dementia, and I visited him in a nursing home, and we sang all the songs, and we sang all the songs that we sing in the choir, and he just loved it. Couldn't remember my name, but he remembered the songs. But the cognitive stimulation is helpful. Yes, you had a comment here?
Yes, the other thing that's really important is exercise, because exercise has been shown over and over again to stimulate to make new brain cells.
Correct.
And other cells in the body. So it's not just social, it's education, social, and exercise.
Correct. Exercise is better than Prozac too. If you're depressed or something like that, exercise is shown to be better in terms of treatment of depression than the medication itself. Okay, we're going to move on here. So, dementia and caregiving. If a person has dementia, the family is like to spend a third of their resources on care in the last 5 years of life. Caregivers, 33% are daughters, 17% are sons. That's not fair, is it? So 25% are spouses. Adults 70 and older with dementia receive twice as many care hours per month than those without dementia. So you can see that there's a caregiver burden on it. Dementia by the numbers, 6 million Americans is expected to go to 8.5 million by 2030. 1 in 3 persons in the United States died with dementia, more than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. Between 2000 and 2019, deaths from heart disease declined, but from dementia rose 145%. So the reason for this, why would you suspect that? Yes, the baby boomers, people 65 and older, 85 and older is the fastest growing segment of the population right now. So in 2020, Alzheimer's disease was the 7th leading cause of death behind heart disease, cancer, and COVID. The third leading cause of death. Okay, so if you have a spouse and you're developing dementia, you have a greater likelihood of staying where you are, living where you are, You also have a greater likelihood of receiving the services that you'll need. You also have a greater likelihood of having a higher quality of life. And many of you I know are and have been caregivers, and you know these things firsthand. You know these things firsthand. So, aging in place, this has been coming into thinking about geriatric care for the last 30 or 40 years. And at Otterbein, I think it hit here about 25 years ago when we were talking about aging in place. And the bias is to preserve where you are, to maintain a high quality of life where you are, and to bring resources to you rather than sending you to skilled nursing care. Now, there's a certain, there's a benefit to that, but there's an economy of scale that goes to, if you cluster folks who all need all the same kind of care, there's an economy of scale that there's a trade-off there. So it's a market-driven forces. If you would say to someone, okay, as soon as you develop these kind of things, they ship you into nursing care, that would not be a good thing, right? You would not get many people to move to Otterbein for that reason. So the idea is to age in place and to have a sense of autonomy. The services are brought to the resident in the least restrictive environment so that the highest quality of life may be maintained. So the true abilities, to point out your point over here, that the true abilities are not always known when someone moves in. I was talking to Jenny over here just a few moments ago, Jenny Longmire. Jenny used to be the intake coordinator for independent living folks. And at that time, she was able to ask all kinds of questions that before, oh, here's a joke for you. Okay, knock, knock. HIPAA. I can't tell you. Okay, before all this HIPAA stuff was coming in, you could ask all kinds of questions. If people were willing to answer, they would answer, and it would provide a better decision-making model, but it's not able to be done in these days for a number of different reasons. Fair housing, I guess, is part of the question, and HIPAA. So now sometimes, let's say, okay, my mom is coming from Florida because the neighbors in Florida called me. I live in California. Her neighbors called me in California, said, your mother's not doing very well. You better get down here right away. So I go down there, and I have a life in California, and I have a family and all that. So I go to Florida, and I say, oh my God, Mom. So we have to move. So she says, she's from Lebanon. Let's say she's from Lebanon. This is fictitious. I don't know. I don't know anything. Okay, but then, okay, so she wants to move. She moves to here. Okay, and the son brings her up, gets her situated, doesn't know exactly what's going on exactly, but gets her situated in an independent living apartment in LEC. Oh man, am I relieved that she's got the safety net, and I go back to California. Okay, so then what's going to happen? Well, she's probably in a new place, right? So she's going to be disoriented. She's leaving all her friends, her familiar environment. If she was struggling down there in her familiar environment, she's going to be struggling in an unfamiliar environment. So then, how long do you give this person a chance to adjust? And what kind of benefits are, how much tolerance can there be when it comes to questions of safety, or whenever they knock on your door for the 10th time and say, where is the dining room? So how does that work out? So someone who might be coming here in independent living, we may not know exactly what their capacities are. Or sometimes whenever they come in, I think this is true. I don't know if you've ever gone on vacation. Let's say you're going to Myrtle Beach. You drive through the day. It takes 14 hours to get there from here. So you drive and you get there at nighttime. And when you get there at nighttime, you can smell the air, you can hear the sea, the ocean, but you don't know where it is. You know, you can just hear it out there. And when you get up in the morning and you look around, you say, oh my God, it's so beautiful out there. You know, it's so close, and you know, it's like a completely different world when you wake up in the morning. Well, I think sometimes when people come into Otterbein or come into a place like this, they come under the veil of night. They come in, it's as if it's nighttime, you know, and sometimes it takes a month to wake up and say, here I am. You know, let alone accepting it, let alone all of the different issues that go into settling into a new place when you didn't want to come, or even when you wanted to come. I remember I'm from Steubenville, Ohio, and what's wrong with Steubenville? Dean Martin's from Steubenville. Hey, I moved to Cincinnati, and it took me 7 years to feel that Cincinnati was my home. It took me 7 years. And I remember I was listening to Joe Nuxall do spring training, calling a baseball game. And I said, man, it's great to hear his voice. I said, I guess I must feel like this is my home. So these kind of things, these kinds of feeling like you're settling in, like you're comfortable, it takes a long time to adapt, even when you're in the best of health, So someone's true ability, they may not be known, they may not be revealed, or they may not be manifested upon admission. So a change in residence may trigger episodes of disorientation, and it takes time to adjust, of course. An independent living setting, of course, is more desirable and more palatable if you're moving. Let's say mom didn't want to move. Say, Mom, okay, I know you don't want to move to a nursing home, and I know you don't want to move to assisted living. They have independent living places here. Let's do that at least, okay? So in order to negotiate this move, someone may agree to an independent living circumstance, even though they might not be most appropriate for that independent living situation. At least get them there, and then we'll figure it out. This happens sometimes. Okay, I know. I've been coming here for a long time at Otterbein, and I know the people who are in marketing. They have to meet their quotas. You know, they have to meet their quotas, and so their criteria for entry is not the clinic's criteria for entry, and so sometimes the folks in the clinic are saying, "How did this happen? You know, how did it happen that someone came to live here in independent living, but they may not be most suited to that?" And so the good news, at least about it, is that there are processes in place to adapt to that situation. And you're a part of that process, like it or not. You are a part of that process. And I think an important part of the process, too. This is part of being in the caring community that you are. Okay. So fair housing laws, evaluation of true abilities to determine the appropriate accommodation. So sometimes this is where I or one of my associates, Dr. Pham, who comes with me here, we might be asked to evaluate someone to help them understand, help the family understand, help the folks who are making decisions understand, well, what are the true abilities here so that we can find the best place to live? Okay. So a community's response to emerging dementia. A resident's family and a facility that collaborate, the resident themselves, family and facility collaborate in an understanding of the true abilities and the needs that are to be supported. So the facility care managers and the families, it's appropriate that they shoulder the responsibility of care, but neighbors at times being part of the caring community are called upon to do this, probably because things emerge that are not always covered by the decision makers upon an entry. So, in terms of neighbors helping neighbors, certainly there is a culture of caring here and service in a faith-based community. Buying into the mission and ministry of service as a participant rather than an observer. So this is something that I don't know if you thought about this when you first came here. Did you buy into the mission of Otterbein? I think when you move here, you have to buy into the mission. And in order for the community to be what it's meant to be, a caring community, because we're doing this for each other. We only have, I don't know how many caregivers, you know. We do this for each other. We're here to help each other. So we buy into this ministry of service as a participant, not as an observer. So when someone says, why don't they do something about it? That's the point of view of an observer, you know. Why don't they do something about it? It's really our problem, and we generate the solutions with each other. So neighbors as eyes and ears for the care managers and staff. So sometimes people I feel like I'm ratting on my neighbor. You know, I'm feeling like if I tattle on them, then they're going to say they know it was me because I just talked to them about this, you know. So the idea of letting the staff know it's part of it's like, you know, it's like a family. You know, Mom, did you know that Carol came in last night at 12:30 and I smelled alcohol in her breath, you know. So these are things that families do. We let one another know that, so in case someone is in distress. So sometimes, I don't know, I think you guys have probably, I don't know if you do there for the grace of God go I, or do you say there goes the neighborhood, you know. I think most of us say there for the grace of God go I. Now, you know, sometimes though, it's a fact. Sometimes our neighbors can be nuisances. Sometimes there's a nuisance factor that goes with impairment. There's a nuisance factor that goes with that. And, you know, there's a certain amount of patience, of course, that you want to generate, and there's a certain amount of tolerance. But there's not one way to approach it, and everybody is different. Some people are more willing to engage. Some people would rather not, and it's okay if you don't to that extent. Okay. Knowing how and when to help, when to say, let's get the help that you need, like you were saying, referring to care managers, that's an appropriate response. Now, the question that I have sometimes, okay, you're a neighbor, but you're also a friend. And, you know, when you come here, you make friends. And so friends are a little bit more willing to do something for a friend than they might be just for the neighborliness. So when do you draw the line? How do you draw the line of how much help? How do you do that? How do you draw the line? What you're comfortable with. How else do you draw the line? What do you mean, be aware that they don't hurt themselves? Okay, so safety when safety becomes important. So safety is a demarcation line. You know, if people are unsafe, how else do you draw the line? You have to consider your own life. Your own life, and maybe what your true abilities are, and what will it mean if I do this now? Will I be required to do it some more? What will that mean? How else do you draw a line? Good point. How would I want to be treated myself if I were in their situation? Okay. The effect on caregivers. I think that that in itself is a subject. You know, that could take up a whole session itself. But the caregivers, I would say this. As a caregiver, your job is to try to marshal the resources that you need to face the demands of the situation. Now, if you have more demands of the situation, if there's more required, then you need to find more resources to match that. So when people first are encountering roles as caregivers, the demands are high. The demands are high because they don't know. They don't know how to care for someone. It changes the whole relationship. You know, I talked to this lady I was telling you about yesterday. Her husband and I went out. She said, Mike's not there anymore. I said, I really like it. I really like Mike. We have a good time. But then she said, Mike's not there anymore. So these things, the relationships change. So the demands on the caregiver are high, especially at first. And then as a person learns about dementia, they learn, and if they can assemble a team, then the demands and the resources are roughly equal. And we call that coping. We call that coping if they're getting by because they have the resources to face the demands of the situation. Resources would be something like having children who are available, and cooperative, you know, having enough money, having people who can come in to help from home health agencies, having the physical strength yourself, having the patience. Patience is a resource. So having all of these things to address the demands of the situation so they're at least equal. And sometimes in some cases, people can thrive with dementia. You can thrive with dementia by having more resources than you need to face the situation. My friend yesterday, his wife is very educated. She has a wonderful family. She has adequate finances, and he's a very cooperative kind of guy, you know. But his dementia is getting worse. So this fellow, believe it or not, under the circumstances, he is thriving even though he has dementia. She knows how to take care of him. She knows how to communicate with him. She can manage his daily life. And the worst thing that happens is he puts her hand away when she tries to shave his eyebrows. So as you can see, this model of demands and resources is a good way to consider that. It's a good way to consider that. So as a caregiver, your job is to find and marshal as many resources as you can to help you do what you need to do. Get a team, get people to help you, build goodwill, find the resources that you need so that you're not overwhelmed by doing it all by yourself. I hope that addresses your question. Okay, yes.
Talking about the lady who said on her court there are so many people that need help, and it all falls down. And many times this just happened. You're in a fairly small court. It's not only dementia, but physical needs of your neighbors.
Correct.
You're like a court rep or something like that. A lot of it falls on you to be the one to help everybody, and it gets overloading sometimes. And I agree with her. It can be.
Yes, what she's saying is that in some situations there may be people on the court who have high needs, and it's not just dementia, it's physical needs or whatever, not driving anymore, not able to bring in their newspaper or whatever, and you feel sucked into this vacuum of a need vacuum or a responsibility vacuum. That's your choice. That's your choice. Now, you know, how you approach that is up to you, but you don't have to answer all those needs. You don't have to fill those needs, you know. So, but I understand how you feel drawn into it because it just kind of, you know, what are you going to do when you see these? Yeah, but that's up to you. That's up to you. That's up to you. I understand the conflict that you feel conflicted. You feel conflicted. You have so many limitations. Okay. So, knowing when to help and say, let's get you the help that you need. Friends or sometimes more than just neighbors. So, do friends do more? Do friends do personal care? Would a friend do personal care? Would a friend dress a wound? You know, can you help me change my bandage on my toe? You know, would a friend do that? Maybe. You know, is that crossing the limit? Is that, for some it might be, but if you're a friend, if you have the skill, you would do this for your sister if she asked you to. So it's not always clear when to do that and when not to, you know. But you know that if you're feeling overwhelmed yourself, that's an indication in the system that something needs to happen. That's an indication in the system. So your feeling overwhelmed is an important part of the system that, hey, we can't have you feeling overwhelmed like this. All of these people having so many difficulties in one spot and you being the one who feels like you have to answer the call. So that would be an opportunity for you to approach Sandy Balanik or anybody who has that responsibility to say, hey, this is what's going on in our court. We need to have more help, or however that's their responsibility as well. It's their responsibility, and they need you to make them alert to that. Otherwise, they won't know. Okay. So here are helpful roles of willing neighbors. You probably do some of this yourself. Transportation and errands. Oh, I'm going to Kroger's. Do you need anything? Okay. Safety checks. You can do that. You know, some people used to have blinds. You know, if you put your blinds down, you put your blinds up, that means you're not dead, you know. So sharing emergency contact numbers, you know. If something happens, call my son, call my daughter. This is the information. Sharing meals in times of temporary need. You know, if there's a death or if someone comes back from the hospital or they're just coming back from TCU, then you're able to maybe bring meals to them. So more on a temporary basis versus, man, she's not eating unless I give it to her. Now that's a problem, right? That would be a problem. So you would have to let someone know about that. So walking the dog, feeding the cat when someone's away, watching the house when away, helping plant flowers. You know, these are things that neighbors do for one another. Crossing the line and helping neighbors. Personal care, nursing care, lending money, paying bills, doing banking for people, medication management, housekeeping, laundry, emergency responder, lifting folks off the floor. Please don't tell anybody that I fell, you know? How many times have you said that to yourself? You know, emergency responder, going in with neighbors during their doctor visits. Now sometimes, I don't know, do you ever do that? Going in with someone to their doctor visits? That would be pretty personal, wouldn't it? Okay, so that would be family. That would be family. That wouldn't be neighbor. Okay, now this is a little paradigm that I've developed that helps. We're almost done here, by the way. That I've developed that helps understand how true abilities change over time. You can see the diagram here. Whoops. What am I doing here? The middle button. What did I just do? Okay, the middle button. Okay, right here, sorry. So this is the independent living person, the resident. Now, their job is to have autonomy. Now, as time goes on, true abilities tend to diminish, okay, tend to decline. And at any given point, someone has to fill in right here what they're not able to do themselves. Let's say, for example, you yourselves, okay, so you sold your house and you came here because you didn't want to cut the grass. You didn't want to clean out the gutters. You know, those kinds of things like that are up here. Now, as a person declines or as you age, you're not able to do the things you used to do. Maybe right here you gave up driving. So if you're not driving, then someone else, the caring community, either provides that or you pay for it. Now, so the idea of the independent person is to be autonomous, to take care of yourself. Now, the idea of the caring community, their duty is to protect. So sons and daughters are always worried about safety, okay? People here who work at Otterbein, they're always concerned about safety, and that's their job, to be concerned about safety. So someone will say, I can take care of myself. Yeah, but you're not really safe, Mom. Or I can drive. I've never had any accidents. I've been driving since I was 14. My dad put me on a tractor to bale hay, and I have had not had an accident ever. So, but your driving you're not safe when you're driving. I watched you. So as time goes on, a person's functional abilities decline. Okay, so then you as a caregiver, if you're a caregiver for your wife or husband, you make it up. So at any given point, it has to be 100%. So someone has to do the laundry, someone has to do the shopping, someone has to make the bed and clean the floors. So even though a person cannot be autonomous, something has to give. Now sometimes if a person, let's say you think that you're here. Let's say this is where I am, but you're truly down here. So the distance between here and here, a person will be conflict with the caregiving community, with your family or whoever, because you say, I can do it, but you really can't. And so whenever they try to provide the help that you need right here, they're going to perceive that as a push. So what will they do? They'll push back. So the idea is to come, that's why it's important to have an idea of what the true abilities are. What we're talking about today is, okay, what are the true abilities of our neighbors? What are my true abilities? And what if this is happening, what are my true abilities? What kind of compensations need to take place? Because it changes over time. Okay, this is so I guess we could say, okay, that between here and here is independent living. But at a certain point, you have to maybe make a decision that I'm no longer able to live in independent living, but maybe you're still living in independent living, but your wife or husband is providing support for you. So that's really assisted living, because that's the amount of help that you're getting there. Meals, medication, doctor's appointments, transportation, clothing, bathing, all those kinds of things that go in assisted living are happening while you're living in an independent living situation. Okay, so these demarcations, they're kind of arbitrary, but at this point, there's a decision here. You have to make a decision. Here, you make a decision. Okay, if someone falls, then that sends that over to this situation here. If they fall and break a hip, then they're in nursing care for a little bit, and they try to rehabilitate to the point of going back to where they were living before. So here are some other. So this is the amount of caregiving burden for someone who is independent living. This is the amount of caregiving burden for someone who is in assisted living. So if you're taking care of your husband or wife, this is how much it might weigh on you and let alone you having your own difficulties. You know, you might have your own difficulties. And then the next is if this is a caregiving burden for someone who requires this kind of help. So this is a list of functional activities of daily living that we differentiate functional activities of daily living from independent, or what is it? Instrumental activities of daily living. So instrumental activities of daily living are things that help you keep your life organized. It's mostly thinking things, like managing your bank accounts, like paying bills, arranging for medical care, medical decision making. So these things are things that families and individuals do. You don't necessarily get into that with your neighbors. If they have a comment, or if they say, "What do you think?" Of course you can tell them what you think. Okay. So this is all I got. I hope this has been helpful for you. The main thing I would like to leave you with is the idea is that this community here is really the safety net. Each one of you is the safety net, and if there is something that is of significant safety concerns that you should and nuisance concerns or difficulties that someone is struggling to the point that they are no longer able to live, you can help them to a point, but then also let Sandy or anybody in independent living clinic over there, let them know so that they can.
I just had a quick question. Does it seem like people younger and younger are getting dementia?
Not necessarily. No, people younger and younger are not necessarily getting, but it's more understood now. Now, it's more understood. Okay.
Could you remind them that there's 2 pages?
Oh yes. Okay. There are these pages here. Fit. So one page has this graph, and on the other side of the page, it has the graph with zone and relationship zone. And then on the other one is a dementia timeline. And on the other side of that are events that may trigger care. So if you find yourself, for example, noticing these kinds of things, your neighbors, that's a sign that those are red flags that you can pay attention to in yourself, in your spouses, and Sandy know. Sandy, do you have any comments that you would like to add to what we've said? Excuse me?
Laura Hills is a great resource as well.
Yeah, Laura, I'm sorry. There she is. I see you, Laura. Okay. If someone sees someone living alone, going down that slope, well, the idea is safety and finding out what their true abilities are, so that services can be provided. If they're not able to stay in independent living, then a decision has to be made. Okay, one more comment.
I noted on one of your slides, it was talking about when you come to the community, buying into this sort of community where we're helping and loving and
Correct. You buy into the mission.
I wonder how much burden is there on the Otterbein marketing department or the Otterbein marketing communications to let people know that they're moving into a community where you're going to be called upon to help your neighbor.
I don't know how that. Is anybody from marketing? No. That always happens. Yeah, I think that's an important thing. That is, for me, I think that's a selling feature. That's a selling feature. We're not where your every need is anticipated. We're here to help each other. So I don't know the answer to that, but at your next marketing meeting, Kendra, you can talk about that.
I didn't hear the question.
The question would be, when marketing talks to people who are coming in, do they talk to them about Otterbein in terms of helping? If you're coming here, you're going to be helping one another. Do they ever say that to folks? They're saying no. Well, maybe they. So it's part of the. That's why I would come here.
When I first got here, I was given a book by the welcoming committee called Spirit of Otterbein. That book was immensely important to me in understanding how the community worked. I don't know if that's still happening, but I didn't get it in advance of coming here. I got it after coming here.
Yeah, well, it costs money, that's why. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, so, but it is important to have a buy-in, and when folks are oriented to Otterbein, you should be oriented to that. You're going to be called upon to help someone. This will be an opportunity. Okay, thank you very much for your time. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, right before you leave, I did set up a table with some notepads on it if anyone would like a copy of the presentation emailed to them. So just write your name and email down on some of those notepads I have out there. And if you are missing either page of the handouts that Dr. Gabis passed out, please stop by the program office and we will make sure you have both of them.
Thanks.